We are the Mississippi Municipal League. We're a private association that represents cities and towns in Mississippi. We have about 292 member cities and towns, and we're here today for our delayed winter conference. We normally do it in January, and we decided to do a hybrid conference where we've got some people participating online, and then we've got a limited number of people in person. So this is our winter conference. We're just pleased to be together as a group.
I think right now it's how we come out of COVID still. This time last year, everybody was really concerned about what the impacts were from a health standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and we're still assessing that. And right now, I think the challenges are with the funding that's coming down to help us stay on our feet and make improvements where we can, and hopefully take measures where we don't have to experience some of this again in the future. Still a pretty steep learning curve. And so right now the message is to make sure that those monies that do come down directly to cities and counties at the local level, that we can put them to the best use.
Everybody's trying to get back to some sense of normalcy during the pandemic. There's some federal money that's been appropriated by Congress, and so we're trying to help determine what that money can be used for and before it gets to the cities. But I think we're all hoping that they'll be able to use it for infrastructure. We know they can use it for water and sewer infrastructure. We're hoping that they can use it for surface infrastructure as well, because those are probably the top issues for every city, no matter the size.
This next year, Congress, in whatever its wisdom was, is going to send you $932 million. Now, the Speaker and I have been meeting on that. We will distribute those funds as quickly as possible to your town. You will have a significant amount of money coming to you. In addition to that, there's $1.8 billion coming to the state of Mississippi. We will be distributing that as well. One of those parts that it's used for is water and sewer. So water and sewer is going to be really important when we come back and the legislature allocates those funds, because we'll have additional money to what you're going to have. There are other strings and other things we have to do to spend that state money, but water and sewer is clearly in the program to be utilized for us. So I'm emphasizing to you today, we're coming back and we're going to be looking at that. So as you go through your process of determining what you need and what your needs are, we want to pay particular attention to that. Very important. The other thing is that we all are going to be challenged. Members of the House, members of the Senate, us, all of your leadership will be challenged. We don't get $1.8 billion very often. I don't think we've ever gotten it. In the 200 years we've been here, we've never gotten that kind of money. What we have to do is make sure that it is extended beyond 1 year. Let's not blow this one opportunity we have to improve Mississippi, not just for you, but for those children and grandchildren that you're raising right now. When we go through this, don't spend that money on one-time things. You will be inundated with people telling you we got to have this little thing that'll make our life better for this year. Think about the future. Think about how far we can go with this. If we're able to leverage $1.8 billion plus $932 million that you're doing, $2.7 billion over a period of years, think where Mississippi's going to be. Think about where your town's going to be. So if you will work with us as we go forward in making sure that the money that we get here in this next 6 months extends out for the next 6 generations, that's where we need to be.
Our capital city has a huge issue with infrastructure, but even some of the smaller ones do. And so it's a lot of money being discussed, but I know infrastructure is an issue across the country. And so we're just watching that very closely, but it would be very helpful to all of our cities and counties for that matter.
It is super critical that the President and Congress address infrastructure needs of all cities and towns across the country. Mississippi is no different. We are suffering aging infrastructure infrastructure, water, sewer, broadband. And so when you talk about aging infrastructure, there's a direct relationship between infrastructure and economic development. Not only will it make sure that we get in places from people from point A to point B and providing goods and services, but it also will provide the necessary economic boost that we need to stimulate our local economies with an infrastructure package.
The need is great, as you well know, and everyone knows, and the need for cities and towns infrastructure is all over, especially Greenwood in my city. It's an old city, it's a historic town, which we're very proud of, but we do have infrastructure problems. We do have linings that need to be done in the sewer lines because they've been there for hundreds of years, and it's really time to do this, but we just didn't have the funding. So this gives us that ability to be able to look for the future and to see what we can do in the way of infrastructure to improve our city. So we're so grateful for this opportunity.
When you see a big swash of money coming from the federal government to our state government to our local cities and towns, you see an economic push. We hire contractors, we hire engineers, we hire the folks that we see in our churches and our Walmarts and our Krogers day in and day out, having those jobs, making it better and making our roads better to travel on in our local communities.
First responders bill, though, has not had any funding attached to it yet. So we were able to get a law passed this year that just extends the implementation deadline to January 1 of 24 to give us more time to identify the funding. We believe it is important coverage. We know our firefighters and first responders are at risk for certain cancers, and so we want to be able to help them, but at the same time, the cities need help paying for that. So that's what we're working toward before January 1 of 24.
That was a well-intended bill, but it went well beyond your traditional funding sources that you have in a city, even in some rural areas where it covered volunteer responders, and that is a noble thing we need to try to move forward to, but there's got to be a funding source that goes with it. That has not been identified, but it is a pretty substantial commitment on a city's already strapped budget, and so we're hoping that the legislature can help us find a vehicle, since that was a mandate from the state level to the cities and counties to find a way to fund that.
For years we've had cities ask for specific authority to use golf carts, and if it's not in state law already, the city has to ask the legislature for specific permission through a local and private. So this year we got a general bill introduced that would give any city or town the authority to allow golf carts to be used on their street, on certain streets that they determine and that they can regulate. And that's just a good tool for cities. A lot of cities like to use them for special events, in retirement communities, in historic districts, but they need some ability to regulate that without having to ask for special permission from the legislature. So that's a big win for all of our cities.
We passed the lease of dark fiber. Now, what that is fiber that runs from really from Gulfport area all the way up to Scott County with Mississippi Power, and then from here by Entergy up to Memphis. They have fiber that they utilize for starting and keeping up with all the substations. So what that allowed them to do now is to lease the part of the fiber that's not being used for the substations, which you've already paid for as part of your public expenses for utilities. What it allows them to do is lease that for broadband. Now, Mississippi is one of the leaders in broadband expansion, and we wouldn't be able to do like 10% of that if it wasn't for C-Spire. So thank you, Terrell. I mean, for the work that you do, our own home place. But now we're going to be able to tap into these unused resources and go out further into the counties. And with the money that we spent last year out of the CARES Act, we spent about $65 or $70 million. It was matched by our co-ops, did a great job, and there are literally thousands of miles more now of broadband. In the act from this year, there's another $166 million in there for us, and we intend to further expand broadband to those areas of the state that are not served. Now that is so critical. Farming now is completely needs the internet. Our children need to be able to get do their lessons on the internet, even though they may be going back to class at night. Just the access to the intellectual world that goes with that is so critical to us. Mississippi has taken the lead in expanding broadband, and you will see us continue to do that as we go forward. So I thought all of those were really important things to do. We have a lot of positives that are coming out of the legislature this year, and I encourage you to look at the bills and whatnot. But one of the things I'd like to emphasize today is probably the largest economic development that we have. It's right there. Teacher pay raise. That's what happened. When we look at where we're going in Mississippi, and we look at where we want to go, as we look at our structures and everything like that, as we look at making bonds, which we bonded a lot this past year, probably $250 to $300 million in bonds will go out. We paid off a little bit more than that in debt, I think. So as we look at all of that and we're building these various facilities, do you know what the best economic engine is? The human brain. Now you take that child, and we doubled our early learning collaboratives this year to where our young people, our 4- and 5-year-old young people, can get a start on their education. So when they come out at 18 years old, we're not talking about something that has a 10-year or 20-year useful life. That brain, that child that we've given that start to, will be an economic engine for the next 50 years in Mississippi. They'll be the next mayor, the next alderman, the next business person. That's where it's coming from. So our emphasis, and you can take a look at this, our emphasis ought to be on that economic engine that's most important to Mississippi, child's brain. That's where we need to be. And when we talk about doing developments and we talk about all the other expansion, nothing compares to that. So we should be very excited about that. One of the things we did was we added $8 million for the learning collaboratives. Our lottery produced $35 million for education, $35 additional million. And some of that, like $8 million, goes for teacher supplies. It's a phenomenal thing.
We made sure we made an economic impact in investing in our teachers by investing in our children. And so the teacher pay raise was really big, and we're very glad that our teachers were thought about. I think every legislative session we should do something for our teachers, because when you think about me as a mayor or a council person or a business person, the backbone of America's economy are our teachers.
I want to take what time I do have this morning and talk about an issue that has received a lot of attention this session. And is going to continue to receive attention in the days to come, and that is the elimination of the income tax. Now, the reason that's important to you is because a part of that plan deals with cutting the grocery tax in half. And I know a lot of you are concerned about that. And so I want to take this opportunity to alleviate that concern for you this morning. I don't know how much you know about the plan, how much you've heard about the plan. I'm going to kind of give you a 30,000-foot view of the plan, so that you can have confidence and assurance that not only is it good for you in your capacity as in the municipal league, but it's good for the state, it's good for the people you represent, it's good for your towns, it's good for our economy, which is going to transfer or dovetail into more economic prosperity for the state of Mississippi. I think we start with the premise that elimination of income tax is a good thing. That puts more money in the pockets of the citizens of this state. What are they going to do with more disposable income? Dispose of it. They're going to spend it. That's what you do. If I came in here and gave you a $2,000 check right now for something, you would probably go spend it on something. That results in economic development, economic prosperity. Some of the economists that have looked at this plan have said that currently, under our current structure, our state is being hurt to the tune of about $371 million in gross domestic product per year. The elimination of the income tax would result in a $371 million increase in gross domestic product in the state of Mississippi. That is equivalent to an $8,000 increase in income to a family of 4 in Mississippi. Basically a $3,000 increase per adult. That is that is the result of no cost, or at the expense of no cost to the state of Mississippi. That's a good thing. That's going to result in economic prosperity, which means the people who shop in your town are going to have more money to spend, which is going to result in more benefit, economic benefit to your town. Under our plan, the first thing we propose to do is to exempt the first $40,000 of income for every Mississippian from taxation. Currently, only the first $5,000 is exempt from income. Now, you may recall 3 or 4 years ago, we started on a process to eliminate the tax on the first $5,000 of income. That was a 3% tax on your first $5,000 of income. I think this year's the last year of that plan. It just phased it out at 0.5% a year. So now the first $5,000 of your income is exempt from taxation. We propose to raise that to $40,000. That means everybody in this room and everybody outside this room who's a citizen of the state of Mississippi does not have to pay any income tax on their first $40,000 of income. That is a $1,500 savings per individual, $3,000 savings per household for a married couple. That's money back into their pocket. That's real dollars, ladies and gentlemen. We eliminated the 3% bracket over the last 4 or 5 years. That resulted in $150 back into your pocket, and that's good, but that's not substantial. Putting $3,000 back into the pocket of a married couple is huge. Imagine what they can do with that, how they can provide for their family, how they can help their children, how they can make their cities and towns better by investing those dollars into those communities. That's real tax relief. If we exempt $40,000 per individual, that's $80,000 per married couple. That captures 50% of the people of this state who pay income tax. So right out of the gate, 50% of the people of this state will pay no more income tax, and they will use those dollars to help their families, help their towns, help their communities prosper. Under our plan, in 7 years, that number will be raised to $100,000 per person, $200,000 per married couple. That captures 83% of the taxpayers in Mississippi. So in 5 to 7 years, and there's an element of growth in our plan, which I won't dwell on, but during that time frame, you will see that 83% of the people of this state will no longer pay an income tax. And in 12 years under our plan, nobody in the state of Mississippi will pay an income tax. Now, the question arises is, how do you fill that hole? How do you fill that hole? In Mississippi, the income tax generates $1.7 billion. So we got to fill that hole. That's almost a third of our budget. In addition to eliminating the income tax, we propose to cut the grocery tax in half. Right now, the grocery tax is at 7%. We're going to cut that to 4.5% initially and eventually phase that out to 3.5%. That is real relief for Mississippians, especially the low-income earners. Now, keep in mind, under our income tax plan, the first people to receive the income tax relief are the low-income earners. Those who are making $40,000 or less, those who are making $50,000 or less. So this is real. This is not corporate tax relief down. This is grassroots tax relief up. We're helping those who need it the most initially. And then over time, everybody is helped. Now, you're worried about that grocery tax, I know. So what have we done? We're replacing it with sales tax increase. Just to give you some perspective, our surrounding states, Louisiana has a sales tax of 9.5%. Arkansas, 9.5%. Tennessee, 9.5%. Alabama, 9.2%. Mississippi's at 7%. So when we raise our sales tax to the same level that they are, we are not putting ourselves at a competitive disadvantage. In fact, by raising the sales tax and eliminating the income tax, we're at a more competitive advantage. Why? Because they all still have the income tax. They're charging 9.5% on sales, but they still have the income tax. We're getting rid of it. One of my members is in the retail business, and he is constantly trying to recruit young people to come work for him. And he says, I am at a competitive disadvantage because when I go to a young person, a 25-year-old young person who's looking to start a career, They know when they come to Mississippi, they have to pay a 5% penalty on that income they're going to earn. Now, Tennessee doesn't have an income tax. And he said, that puts me at a competitive disadvantage with them. That young person can go to Tennessee and work and keep 5% of their income. They come to Mississippi, they got to give it to the state. If I can go and I can tell them that they don't have to pay that 5% penalty, then they have a reason to come to Mississippi. We all know, we've heard about brain drain. We've heard about the problem we have in Mississippi with our young people leaving. They're going to other states, other towns. They're leaving Mississippi. We want them to stay here. We think Mississippi's a great place to raise a family. Trying to give them a reason to stay. This gives them a reason to stay. We can provide those jobs, and they know if they work here, they don't have to pay an income tax. You look at any state that doesn't have an income tax and they're prospering, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, you know people are flocking to those states. You see it in the news all the time, their economic prosperity. That goes back to what I said in the beginning about the Ole Miss professors who have looked at this, have said, you're talking a 371 increase in $371 million increase in gross domestic product by eliminating the income tax. And in 12 years, ladies and gentlemen, we can be there. We can be there.
Most folks don't look at the military community and the veterans as an economic driver. Last year in Mississippi's economy, we contributed $2 billion to Mississippi's economy directly from the veterans community. $1 billion of that was directly from pensions and benefits. So that's what the veteran and their families receive, their retirement, the benefits for disability that they earn. But the other comes from their medical care and their CBOC clinics across the state and their towns, not just the VA Medical Center, but do you realize we are blessed with 3 VA medical centers? Well, we'll say 2.5 because one's up in the Delta's capital called Memphis. But every veteran from Highway 82 North goes to Memphis. The Central Mississippi comes to the G.V. Sonny Montgomery Medical Center here in Jackson, and on the Gulf Coast, it's one of the oldest VA medical centers in Biloxi. Our veterans are getting their health care here, and it's the best health care the veterans have received in years as the system continues to improve and understand that customer service is important. Tell you how it's changing. 20 years ago, how many OBGYNs were in the VA system? None. Every clinic has one now. 20% of the military personnel are female. You think they have a need for their own doctors? You better believe it. Matter of fact, Melissa Eccles, who's with me, she is Director of External Affairs at Mississippi VA. She spearheaded our very first inaugural event last week. We partnered with Keesler and the G.V. Sonny Montgomery Foundation to host a Women, Military, and Veterans Summit in Biloxi at Keesler. 2-day event, sold out both days. It's a huge growing population we need to be talking about and what we can do to support them and have them come back home to Mississippi. Part of this effort is how do we help them find jobs? Over half of them are underemployed by the skill set that they have. So how do we do that? So to help you in your community, and not just to focus on the Gulf Coast, but right now in Grenada, we're helping a company that's coming in. They have about 20% set aside. They want to hire veterans. How do they find them? MDA does not have a veteran employment division. Employment Security does not have a veteran employment division. So we formed a task force. That doesn't matter who owns it. So we have Employment Security, we have MDA, we've got our office, the National Guard, we've got the DOD and everybody else at the table. How do we identify and help these veterans match up against jobs that are out there? We've already got our first 5 companies who've partnered with us to give us their list and said, this is what we're looking for, so that we can get those veterans in high-paying jobs. Our goal next year, I gave them a goal of 100 veterans employed making over $30,000 each. Well, they informed me last week that they've moved that needle to 200. Ingalls, VT Halter. We've got companies from Howard to Yokohama that have got veteran set-asides and saying, we want to hire veterans, male, female, black, white, we don't care. We want people who served our country working here because they know how to get up and go to work. They know how to follow instructions. And we want to get them employed and put them here. That's what we want to see happen in Mississippi. So we can help you and your local companies that are already in place, because one thing that we do that most folks don't realize is we are the school authorizing authority. It's one of those good legal terms. You go, what does that mean? That's a governmental term. What it means is over, let's see, of the $1 billion contribution to the economy, so we've got $1 billion coming in pension benefits, Over half is educated in education benefits. The GI Bill, the Sonny Montgomery GI Bill, and the post 9/11 GI Bill that veterans and their families use to go to college. But it's not just for college. Every barber school on the coast, our gaming schools, as well as on-the-job training, companies can actually get paid for training their own employees. And then there are incentives the Department of Labor puts in place for veterans. We have a whole division that works with local companies to put those things in place to help them. So as you have companies that are growing or looking to locate to your city, we want to be at the table because we want to help them know what benefits are out there to hire and employ veterans in your community.
This is a chance to partner with our cities across Mississippi to serve the veterans. We have 187,000 veterans across the state in Mississippi that are receiving benefits. It's a huge economic driver. Veterans in Mississippi contributed $2 billion to our economy last year through pensions, benefits, as well as educational benefits and health care. And that's in the local community. So a lot of our mayors, our city councilmen, and our staff can partner together to make sure that we're helping them with our application for their benefits, that our veterans are receiving what they're entitled, but also we can partner to help honor our veterans. Most folks don't realize, most small towns in Mississippi have a veterans memorial of some kind. Last year during the pandemic when we couldn't hold events, we actually did a virtual event highlighting the Mississippi Vietnam Memorial in Ocean Springs, the Vietnam Wall up in Tupelo, as well as several other local city facilities. And by social media, that gave us a large exposure. But also today's a chance to say thank you to the city of Gulfport. They were ranked in the top 10 of cities nationwide by Navy Federal Credit Union where veterans want to live. And we want to make sure we recognize their commitment to the veterans community in Mississippi.
Local governments are critically important. When you strengthen cities and towns in Mississippi, you strengthen Mississippi. So that is the backbone of Mississippi. That's the backbone of the country. Cities and towns, villages, local economies build America.
It's where the rubber meets the road. We talk all the time that it's not nearly as partisan, and it doesn't need to be. It's pragmatic. It's the practicalities of the road. I tell folks it's not a red or a blue road. It's a blacktop, and it takes green to pave and build it and keep it in place, and that applies across the board. So that old government closest to the people tends to govern best because we hear it and see it every day.
Local government is the key to your cities, your key to your cities in town. If you did not have local government, it would just be a real hectic mess, absolutely. So, and we've got great legislators that take care of Mississippi, and then the local government takes care of the towns and cities. Very important. You have to have that structure to be able to have a good city and town.
Especially what we've been going through the last year, local government is the first group to respond to any kind of issue. We're there where the rubber meets the road, and so cities have had an extremely important role in protecting our citizens during COVID, and I think they've done a fabulous job. But city government is very important. It's the government closest to the people, and so that's what we try to do, help them be strong, help them be trained and efficient, and help us get laws passed that help them.
How can people get more information?
They can go to our website at mmlonline.com, or they can call our office at 601-353-5854.